Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Live at the Waterhole. It's a brand new day with endless possibilities. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'm very excited to be here, of course, as I am every single day that I get to host the show. But if this is your first time watching, a big welcome to all of you. This is a live and interactive show, and you can chat to me. Yep, that's right. You can have a conversation with me and ask me all of the wildlife things. I'm your personal naturalist for the next 2 hours and 15 minutes. But if you don't know how to ask me questions for the first hour and a bit of the show, you can use the YouTube chat. But then, unfortunately, if you want to carry on watching, you're going to have to head over to the WildEarth website. And for those of you that are watching on different channels, that's going to be how you ask us questions. Head over to the WildEarth website and look for the tab that says questions, and then go from there. But as I do every single day, I host this show. I'm going to wait for just a minute or two just to see who is joining us. So please say hello. So first up today, we're at Okokuyo, which is a waterhole in Etosha National Park in Namibia. So we're not even in South Africa, and this is just one of the three different countries that we're able to, not three, four different countries that we're able to visit through these waterhole cameras. And there's plenty of zebra around, springbuck, we'll probably see some gemsbok, or some of you may know them as oryx, that come down pretty much every single day for a drink. Not too much chaos at the moment. I suspect that that will probably change in a little bit, although it looks like most of the animals, or a big group of them, have actually already drank and moved off. And here we go. Hello, Patisse. You're the first one to say hello all the way from Australia. G'day, mate. As I always say, I never say that, in fact, but I just thought I'd say it today. My dad says it a lot, though. I know a lot of Australians, like all my entire family is Australian, so they say things like that. But in South Africa, I would say, how's it? No, I'm just joking. That's terribly informal. You would greet people with that term that were of a similar age, and it's normally the younger folk that would, otherwise we just say, hello, how are you? Polite. But anyways, that's South African slang. How's it? It's a great word. If there are any South Africans that are watching, let me know what is your favorite way to greet people. Mine's normally with an awkward high five just to break the ice. Jenna from the UK, you've just jumped on board as well. Hello, hello. It is nice to see a busy waterhole. The last couple of times I've been at Okokuyo, it's been quite, I don't know, not quite a vast nothingness, really, just a few springbuck here and there. We did have Egyptian geese and goslings swimming around yesterday. Maybe we can have a little scan about and see if they're still here. I did hear some Egyptian geese. I can't imagine that those adults with those goslings would have gone too far away. But let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot of the time, to be quite honest. Huh. Don't see them. I know where they're sitting. Maybe they found a safe spot to hide about. I don't even see the little grebe today, and that's the small little aquatic bird that zooms around at this waterhole. Actually, no birds except the blacksmith lapwing. And is that a blacksmith lapwing chick on the right? Do you see that tiny little bird where the stones are stacked quite high on top of one another? It's actually just disappeared behind the stones, but let's keep an eye out. But I'm pretty sure it was a little blacksmith lapwing. So, oh, there's the little grebe as well in the water. Now it's popped its head up. I suppose I shouldn't shout things out like that too quickly, because grebes are able to hold their breath and dive underwater for quite some time before popping back up on and coming up for air. Let's see if we can get this right. Are you going to pop back up in the same place, or are you going to move around and make it difficult for us? Doesn't want to play ball today? That's fine. Little grebe won't talk about you then. I think. Ooh, we've got another bird that's going to pop up soon. Oh, look at that. So camouflage. I can't believe I didn't see the reflection on the water. Can you spot the black heron? Black-headed heron, sorry. Let me call it by its proper name. I thought it was a log. Shows how good my eyesight is. Anyways, I love herons. I think they are underrated birds. There's the little grebe again. Ha ha ha! We can see you now. They're just amazing. Firstly, the way that they can stand so still and be completely camouflaged, and this is helpful when you're trying to catch fish and frogs and any other aquatic species. They don't always actively hunt. In fact, lots of different birds have different ways to catch their prey, and herons are masters of that. They stand still, wait for anything to swim by, and then we'll strike at them. And hopefully, we'll see some of the other fishing techniques, if not at this water hole, at one of the other water holes a little bit later. Well, I've been wondering what the temperatures are going to be like today, so let's go and check out the weather. Well, not freezing temperatures, nice and warm, but not as hot as what they usually get. Still no rain for Okukuyo. If you have just joined, I have bucket list sightings or things I'd like to see while I'm hosting these waterhole cameras. And one of them is to watch a big thunderstorm roll in from this camera. Uh, what we can do is we can just zoom out very quickly, and then we'll go back in and look at the heron in just a moment. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere, and then you'll understand why. This is the place that I want to see a big thunderstorm. So here we go. Look at how vast the scene is. It's never-ending sky and a lot of nothingness with all the concrete rocks, and so you can just see how arid it is. But as you just head a bit further on, the tree line does start again, and there are some clouds that are developing. For the past few days, they've been coming in slowly, and now I'm looking and I'm seeing a lot of these sort of wispy clouds. almost like they look like they haven't formed properly just yet. So these are called cirrus clouds, the clouds on the left hand side. And that typically means that the weather is going to change. Normally, it's an indication that bad weather is on its way. Of course, you have to take this with a pinch of salt. And maybe maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, because we had the similar clouds forming yesterday. Maybe there will be some rain. I'm just looking to the right. Is it possible if we can pan the camera a bit to the right? Because the pocket of clouds is quite dense, and I just want to see maybe it is already raining elsewhere. I think that might be as far to the right as we can pan the camera. But do you see how it looks like these clouds are engulfing the sky? And if they keep forming this way, they look like they're just getting denser and denser, and you can see some pretty dark gray pockets. But the clouds will need to just drop a little bit more before I think any rain will fall. But we'll keep an eye on it. Wouldn't that be great to be a first for me? I think it might be a first on the cameras if we get a big thunderstorm here. And it is that time of the year, at, well, especially here in Namibia, in Etosha, and then in a lot of the other locations that we have these cameras, big storms and lots of rain are forming. And I'm in Hoedspruit, so the low felt, and we just had rain most of last night and then this morning, but not anything torrential, just a nice little soaking drizzle. Well, I see there's quite a few of you that have joined and are saying hello. So I'm just going to run through a couple of them. Justin Wright, you're on board again today. We've got Sanjiv Roy. Hello, hello. Keeping up with the system. And actually, you've commented, you said, Morning, Taylor, watching from South Africa. Hola, how's it? How's it to you? Obviously, if you missed that, that's a very informal way of greeting people in South Africa. Mahi from Ethiopia, awesome. Welcome. And Grace is here. Sonia. We've got Leo Trim. Well, and Catherine. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm so excited to have you all on board. And I know that there are some silent watchers too. But come on, I want to hear from you. We've been having such great conversations as of late. So I want to keep it rolling. But the Springbok doing what Springbok do best, drinking all of the water while they have it. There's a beautiful big, it looks like a male impala on the left hand. No, it's not. It's a female. Sorry, my bad. Is it a female? With very thin, slender horns, and it looks like a big bulging belly. Come on, turn this way. So, in case you were wondering, both male and female springbuck have horns. Female springbuck's horns don't typically get as big and they're a lot thinner, whereas the male's horns are thicker at the base and slightly bigger. But I'm waiting for this one on the left hand side to turn around so I can actually see what is going on. Might just be the way that it is standing. Now, Picasso, you've asked if I can please tell you about a a platypus. You know that I actually can't tell you too much, unfortunately, because I don't really know I don't really know much about them. They're a strange looking creature, and I really hope to see one day. Well, I mean, okay, I've seen them in captivity in Australia, but uh, other than that, I haven't ever seen them. So I have no idea. And you were specifically wondering if I could tell you how they drink water with a straw, preferably in a cup with ice. No, I'm just joking. I don't actually know. I mean, if you think about how a lot of animals drink, right? Whether they have a beak or a bill, it doesn't really matter too much. And so, I imagine that they would just, I don't know, move their bill open and closed and try and ingest water that way, maybe tilt their head back. I haven't ever seen one drinking. I will have to try and find a video and watch that. This is the reason why I would like to travel the world a bit more, so that I can start observing new animals. Although to see a platypus in the wild is, even in people that live in Australia, most people will go their whole lives without being fortunate enough to see one in the wild. So that's a tricky thing, but I'd love to go on an adventure. But Australia is such a vast continent that I would have to spend many, many months, and my life is here in Africa. But one day, I also don't want to leave my dog behind for too long. Even 2 weeks is too long. My life revolves around him. I think we might get some rain. I'm just watching these clouds. They're not moving very quickly. There's not much of a breeze today. It's very still. But it's slowly but surely creeping in from the right, maybe a little bit later. And that's typically what happens. The ground will absorb all the heat throughout the day, and then because of the temperature differences, and with all the clouds kind of forming, and then that dew point getting to the perfect point where those droplets will then be released from the clouds, and then some thunder and lightning would be great. I'm sure there must be spectacular images of people who have photographed thunderstorms here. Wow. Some sheet lightning going across the sky, and then maybe even the odd bolt making contact with the earth. and the cicadas are going wild. Ah, there's the black-headed heron again, just standing off to the left of the one springback. No, has it got something? I think it might have caught something. Do you see the way that it is just shaking its head? It was opening its beak every now and then. It looks like it's trying to swallow a creature. There we go. It just swallowed it. I don't know if it was a fish or a frog. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, it's a pity that we missed that, but it's also so difficult to just see the heron, and this camera can only zoom in so much. If the heron was standing at the water's edge closest to the camera, that would be very nice. So now that it has eaten something, you saw that it just had a drink of water just to help lubricate and wash down whatever it has eaten. It's a long way to go. And there comes the oryx or a gemsbok also coming in for a drink. There'll be more that come and join it soon. And look at their horns. Impressive. They look like they're so brittle because they're so long and slender, but they're not. That is a tough piece of equipment. Matt's mum, you've said, how do the animals know there are no predators in this waterhole? They seem to go into it very deep. You're quite right, eh? It's unusual. However, because of Etosha's location and because it's so arid, the main predators that you're going to find in the murky waters is crocodiles, but it's not ideal habitat for the crocodiles. So they would typically be around Botswana, into the delta, those areas where there's more water around all year. So yeah, they haven't been crocodiles in this area for a very, 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 very long time. So naturally, the animals have figured that out and feel comfortable with going into the water. The chances of a crocodile arriving here, unless it was introduced, highly unlikely. They've got all this water to drink from, yet they still insist on standing on top of one another. But they will quite often drink in a long line, standing side by side. I would feel quite relaxed drinking at this particular water hole, just with there not being much vegetation around the edge of it. It would be difficult for something like a pride of lions to sneak up on the animals. There's just nowhere for them to hide. Of course, they can creep really low down to the ground, and if it was an exceptionally hot day, perhaps a mirage. would help hide them as they crept in closer. But goodness gracious, that's quite something. Okie dokie. I think what we're going to do is we're going to head over to Jamala and see if there are any elephants. Here we go. We've got one elephant. You can see that it is quite overcast. Not much sunshine today in Madikwe Game Reserve in South Africa. Oh, there we go. Should I say partly cloudy? A bit of wind. Oh, and now elephant? What's the problem? I did have a chuckle. I saw there was a comment from Sanjeev. You said, if a big herd of elephants are near to your farm, all you have to do is just blow your plastic vuvuzela and the herd will move away immediately. That's definitely a good way. Or if you have a obnoxiously loud sneeze, I can do them sometimes. I reckon that would probably give a herd of elephants a fright as well. Oh, there we go. That explains why that bull was behaving like that. We couldn't see the other individual uh, sneaking up behind him. But Sanjeev, I like the way that you have suggested that you could chase elephants away. And for some of you might not know this, especially when it comes to elephants and farms or crops or anything along those lines, they can be deemed quite destructive. I don't think that's necessarily the case. They're just taking the advantage of a situation. There's food there. They don't know that they're not supposed to eat it. And it's nice and it's tasty and it gets watered all the time. So why wouldn't we go in and feast upon it? Obviously, farmers don't enjoy this, but if you are able to chase animals away without using any weapons of any kind, then that's obviously the better thing to do. However, it can be very dangerous. So please don't try and chase animals, wild animals away. Right, if you can just move away from the situation, that is the best thing to do. But sadly, in lots of different places, like when I was in Sri Lanka, people would use something called a bear banger, and they would throw them in the direction of the elephants, and they make a very loud, explosive bang, and that would typically get elephants to move away. But there's different ways now that there are well, different techniques that they're using to try and keep elephants out of areas that they should, can I say, shouldn't be, because humans have decided that they shouldn't be there. So African honeybees are one of the most effective ways to keep elephants out of your garden, and uh, and that technique is actually being used all over. Some people have used chili oil, bells, and all sorts of things, on fences to try and give them a fright. But bees work the best. But unfortunately, you can't use bees in Asia because the bees are not as aggressive as the African honeybee, and they simply just won't do the trick. Tasman, you're wondering if I've ever been in an area where I've had to help settle human and wildlife conflict. So I have, uh, in varying degrees. So I'm going to start at while I've been working at safari lodges or on a private safari. Elephants are the main culprits at coming around human habitation and investigating and seeing what they can eat. They're naturally curious animals, and for the most part, if you just leave them alone, they'll come and do their thing and then move off. I have chased elephants out of camps before, and in like informal like kind of gardens, not any massive farms or anything along those lines. But like I said, it's quite a risky thing to do, and I definitely don't condone doing that. And in fact, most people that end up getting killed by elephants, because it does happen, it happens in a lodge or a camp situation. So you have to be very careful. Uh, I have a very funny story, and I'm going to share it with you. A couple of years ago, I was in Zambia on a private safari with some guests, and we were having so much fun. And the next minute, there was a couple of elephant bulls that were hanging around, and there's one bull that notoriously comes through and causes havoc and destroys a lot of things within the camp. And I just normally will just leave them. I'm like, you can just whatever. If you break something, it is what it is. But this elephant bull was so cheeky. He walked on over, and we were about to sit down for breakfast. And I think it was breakfast or lunch or something like that. Anyways, a meal. And there was this beautiful big jackalberry tree, a diospyros tree, and it was a bar outside in the open built around the street. Beautiful. And then kind of behind the bar, there was a grass wall, if you will. So just reeds that had been put together and to create like a very simple sort of structure. But I mean, you could push it over and it would kind of fall over. So that I wasn't worried about. So now this elephant is like reaching over this grass wall and has decided, I'm going to feed on the jackalberry leaves, which was not a problem. And then he kept creeping further and further. And then he started pulling on a big branch. And all I could hear was this beautiful wooden counter. And I suppose the bottom part of it, it was starting to crack because the way that the elephant was pulling the tree was creating quite a bit of force and now affecting the actual bar. And I thought, my goodness, this is going to be disastrous, and this elephant is going to be in hot water if it does something like this. So anyways, the staff and that type of thing, they were shouting at the elephant, but it wasn't working because this elephant has been shouted at too many times and it's just like, whatever, don't really care about all of you. Anyway, so now he's now really pushing up against this tree, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to shout on him. So the only thing that I think I could, well, I thought I could do, again, please don't do this, is that in this little informal outside like lounge area, there were scatter cushions. So I grabbed one of the scatter cushions, right, and I threw it in the direction of the elephant. And what I aimed for is I aimed to hit the grass mat because it was going to make a sound. And I was hoping it was going to be a sound that maybe this elephant wasn't used to, because it was used to clapping hands, whistling, and of course, humans shouting at it. And as I did that, the pillow made contact with the wall, and this elephant kind of took two steps back and was like, "What was that?" And eventually, actually moved off. It was quite funny. My guest thought it was hilarious, and then he carried on with his day. So I was really grateful that we could save the bar, because that would have just been disastrous. A couple of times that I've been with students as well, we've had big elephant bulls come through camp. But again, not necessarily in a nice, peaceful manner. Sometimes they'll just come around and feed, and then off they go. There is this one elephant bull that consistently came looking for trouble, and he actually started behaving quite dangerously to a point where none of us could get to a safe place. So myself and another instructor actually ended up chasing him out of camp. No one Sorry, everyone, that's just the wind. I definitely don't want to upset an animal, but there are some times where we have to take certain things into consideration and kind of and step up. But please be very careful. Oh, and then Sarah from the UK, you said there was actually a BBC wildlife program on the UK showed rangers using firecrackers to scare elephants away from the town. I think those are the bear bangers that I was talking about. So it's just the wind catching the mic on the camera every now and then. So yeah, so it does work, but again, animals become used to it, um, and at least for the most part, it doesn't actually physically harm the animal. It's just a really loud sound. It's not pleasant. Every time I heard it in Sri Lanka, I would get a fright because the farmers have their farms pretty much surrounding the wilderness areas, just like what we see in other parts of Africa. For example, in Kenya and Tanzania, where humans and wildlife coexist together. It's a little bit different here in South Africa. So yeah, so not great, but again, you have to do those rangers out there, they just want the best for the elephants because if those elephants continue to destroy farms, then the farmers might try and kill the elephants, which we don't want at all. And then Phil from Brighton, here's an interesting question. You said, in situations like Tavungumi, how does a predator end up stalking humans? Was he just in distress about the snare? So if you don't know what Phil from Brighton is talking about, and again, it's not quite controversial, but I think it's important to discuss these things. Tavungumi was a male leopard that we used to see frequently in the Sabi Sands, and in fact, on the sunrise and sunset live safaris, we'd see him regularly. He fast became my favorite male leopard. And yeah, he was a beautiful individual. And unfortunately, this is one of the other issues with humans and wildlife kind of coexisting in areas is that he got a snare caught around him. Now, a snare is a piece of wire. It's normally quite a thick piece of wire, depending on what animal you essentially are trying to catch. And these snares are set illegally by people who are coming onto these protected wildlife areas, and they set these traps in hope to catch animals, and not necessarily predators and elephants and things like that, but to rather catch antelope species, maybe birds, and either eat the meat or sell the meat, out there. But it's really sad for all the animals. But predators tend to get caught in them. So he got this snare caught around his body. He was able to break free, but unfortunately, the from what I heard from the vets and people who actually went to treat him, the wound was so bad. It was cut so deep, and they did question whether or not he was going to be able to survive. So now you've got an animal that is injured, right? He's not able to hunt on his own. Well, he could, but it's going to be quite difficult. Now, a lot of the leopards in the greater Kruger are quite relaxed around people. They've become habituated. They're not tame in any way, and they'll move freely through lodges and that type of thing. And I think that Tabungumi just got so desperate and was probably in a lot of pain, and unfortunately, yeah, he tried to attack a person, and eventually he was shot. It's a really difficult thing to do. It's so difficult to remove an animal, a wild animal, from an area and rehab it and then try and release it. Because I know a lot of people were saying, why didn't they just do that? It was a situation that happened very quickly, so I think it was very difficult for the organization that that had this whole situation happen to them. I think that they did the best they could in the short amount of time. So taking something like a leopard, which is a territorial animal, out and would have to be away for many months, and then bringing it back, where do you release it? Because if you release it back where it would have normally lived, the chances are that there's probably another leopard living there now in its space. So it's a difficult thing to do, but the vets did all they could to try and save him. And at one point, he really looked like he was going to pull through, but something must have happened. So yeah, so injured animals are incredibly dangerous. It doesn't matter if it's a predator or not. They become desperate and would maybe do things that we would deem out of the ordinary. So yeah, so it's a tricky thing. And so it's important, if you do see animals with snares, even elephants, anything, just report it, send a location to the officials of whichever park or game reserve that you are in, and they will do their best to try and help the animal. Also, if you see snares, it's important to report them too. However, in a place like Madikwe, it's a closed ecosystem, so it's got fences all the way around. There's anti-poaching teams that are constantly patrolling, and hopefully they'll be able to pick up on any people that may have come through to try and set up snares or anything like that, because there are quite a few communities around Madikwe itself.
Step into a world of discovery as you join Eco Training's renowned courses in the heart of Kenya's Masai Mara. These courses are the perfect way to gain a deep understanding of the African bush, even if you have limited time. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to experience the wild in a meaningful and life-changing way. Enroll today and embark on a transformative journey with Eco Training in Kenya's Masai Mara, the leading force in conservation education.
And just touching on how to deter elephants or animals away, Colin Rose, I had a good chuckle at your comment. You said that they also said blasting heavy metal music will most likely drive them away. I think you're right. As some people too might also run away from that. Obviously, everyone is an advocate for trying to coexist with animals peacefully, and of course, the more ways we can come up with being able to deter animals without it being a negative, aggressive response is going to kind of be the best way forward. Again, technology is helping us do that. And then, Justin, you said, what are my thoughts on robots and AI, so artificial intelligence in wildlife conservation? Huh. I think where AI is really important is especially to do with with images. So, like, cameras that are able to uh, pick up different shapes and identify what animal species it is, that type of thing. I think that could be really helpful, especially along fence lines or close to communities where there's potentially a high chance of human wildlife conflict. Um, I think we're going to start using, well, not I think, we already have started using AI so much more with patrolling wilderness areas, from drones. There's some great technology out there. One of the organization I can just think of is Earth Ranger. They take into all sorts of things into consideration, from the property size to what animals will occur, where rhinos are visited most likely. And they'll actually help, well, this app that they do, they take all that technology with the help of AI, and they'll plot like anti-poaching routes. So it's not the same thing all the time, because we as humans, we're creatures of habit, and without even realizing, we tend to do the same thing over and over. So by changing up your anti-poaching patrols, they even sync to the cycles of the moon, or the phases of the moon, sorry. And if you don't know this, but poaching tends to be higher when it's a new moon, so when you can't see anything at all, and yeah, and then they'll kind of generate those random routes, which I think is amazing. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things out there, so yeah, so technology is super important, I think, for preserving wildlife in the long run. There's some areas that are just, almost impossible to penetrate, whether it's because it's dense forested areas or just thick vegetation in general, or super arid, or maybe it's an area where there's a lot of conflict that's still going on. Um, so another great thing where AI is super important is these camera traps that are being used and being put out in all these up and coming wilderness areas, where the animals will be um, a little bit shy, not a little bit, a lot shy, and they'll see or hear or smell people and run for cover. And so by having those cameras out there, able to get a good idea of what actually is living in those spaces without interfering. And I think that's also truly amazing. All the bulls coming around for a drink. It's a very slow day with wildlife, but it's typically what we see when they're when it's a cooler day. Sanjeev, you said thanks to the vets, Tandy, the famous Kruger rhino, got a new lease of life. Sanjeev, I was actually there. I used to work at Kruger, and I was there while that entire thing happened. It was really like quite a shocking thing to see, and Tandy underwent. Sure, she was darted and worked on more times than I can even count, especially in the beginning. But you're quite right. She did get a new lease on life, and she's been so successful at raising calves. And in fact, during that poaching incident, she was actually pregnant. And the fact that she was able to give birth still is unbelievable, because you'd think with a situation like that, it's very stressful, that she probably would have had a miscarriage of some kind. But if you don't know about Tandy the rhino, I highly recommend Googling it. There is a video about it. BBC did a documentary on it too. However, just be warned that it is quite graphic, and it definitely pulls on the heartstrings. But I think it's important for people to see what actually goes on, and kind of how rhinos and a lot of other animals are persecuted, whether it's for their pelts, for their teeth, their claws, their horns, their tusks. We need to protect wildlife at all costs. And then Maruda Shortcake, thanks everyone for such interesting questions. You said, do I think that electric cars would be better for wildlife tourism for the skittish animals? So this is also really interesting. So in the northern Sabi Sand, well, in the Sabi Sand in general, but when I was working at WildEarth many years ago, we were driving around in Juma. There's a camp called Cheetah Plains, and they were the first ones to get electric vehicles. And so off they went. And when I tell you that those cars are silent, except for when they start up, I imagine the sounds like what a spaceship would sound like if it powered up. And the animals were terrified of them because they are so quiet. And the wildlife is so used to these big rumbling vehicles. They can hear them coming from miles away. So to be surprised by a vehicle, they were quite shocked. They have gotten better, and they're getting used to it now. So that was really interesting to see. So it's one thing, animals get used to the noisy vehicles, but then they also have to get used to vehicles silently approaching them. And I think it's better if the animals can hear us coming. Just that way they'll hopefully be a bit more relaxed. And like I said, it's not a big surprise to them. They'll feel comfortable with our presence. And boys are a bit boisterous, pushing and shoving each other around. Again, it's just arguing over who can drink from the fresh water. And I laugh. Every single day we see the same thing. We see the elephants standing up on the higher ground, and they all push and shove and fight one another, like what we're seeing now. And then you get one or two clever elephants that just go, oh, we'll just drop down and we'll stand in the little inlet where the water pipe is, and we'll just drink from there and not be bothered. Clever little elephant. And then Idris, you said, do I think that there is an ethical way for a zoo to be run? Oh my goodness, I definitely don't have the credentials to answer this question. Uh, in Yeah, I don't really know how to answer it. I've spoken a little bit about it before, and what I've said before is I think the way that zoos are being run now are far better than what they used to. People have realized how intelligent animals are and how important stimulus is. Um, so, they're getting quite creative with how to keep animals busy. And a lot of zoos are now turning into what you'd call a safari park. So, more than one animal species interacting one another in a larger enclosure, almost like a paddock. So, I think that that's definitely better to be able to do something like that. But it's such a tricky thing. Uh, I don't know, you'd have to speak to some experts on the subject matter and see what they have to say. There's obviously a big divide. Zoos do have their place, and they've been super helpful with preserving genetics and invaluable research. Yesterday I was talking, or not yesterday, but the last couple of times I've hosted, we were talking about how a zoo was actually responsible for figuring out how giraffe communicate, and that they communicate through infrasounds. They hum. And so yeah, so there's all these pros to a zoo as well. Again, I'm not necessarily uh, supporting it. I have to just sorry, I just knocked my water bottle over because I'm obviously throwing hands around. I talk a lot with my hands. Uh, it yeah, it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to do, and that's it. Like, when you're in this industry, you've got to understand it, or take both sides into consideration, which is a tough thing to do. So I just try and be a bit more open minded about certain topics.
Whether you're a retiree, a recent graduate, or a professional seeking a change, the 55-day Eco Training program is for you. With the coaching of experienced training guides, you'll embark on an unforgettable adventure that will give you a deep understanding of wildlife, conservation, and African cultures. If you sign up locally or internationally using this promo code, you'll receive 2,000 Rand off.
Look at this young elephant. It just hasn't moved. It's been standing there for quite some time now. I bet it's happy that the other bulls have now finally moved off and it can have as many trunkfuls of clean water as it likes. Jennifer, so you've just asked a message on the YouTube, asked a message, asked a question on the YouTube chat. You said, "Why is the water level so low?" So this is something that we've been discussing for a little while now, and we're going to see it consistently happen. So this is not a natural pan. It's well, maybe it was something much smaller, but it's definitely been altered slightly. And where these two elephants are in front of us, they are drinking from a water pipe. So there is a borehole that we're extracting groundwater and pumping it into this pan to try and keep it topped up. And then, of course, when it rains, that's going to help top it up too. But because the temperatures are so extreme at this time of the year, and specifically in this area, evaporation is going to drop the levels of this water at an alarming rate. And then, goodness, there's so many elephants and other animals that come and drink from this particular pan all the time. So you can imagine that water just keeps dropping and dropping. So we're hopefully going to get some decent rain over the next couple of weeks, and then it will just keep filling it up quite quickly. But it always amazes me though as to how fast the water level does drop. I was commenting yesterday, going, it's frustrating trying to keep my pool full at the moment, and I keep thinking, I was like, is there a leak somewhere? Oh, there's no leak. It's just because of the heat. And then, Clara, you've asked, do droughts cause separation and conflict in elephant herds? It could definitely cause separation. And the reason why I say that is that, when you have a drought, firstly, there's not much food around. And of course, finding water is going to be more and more difficult. And younger animals are going to, and very old animals, or any animal, even not just elephants, that has a compromised immune system, is going to feel the effects of the drought the most. And if we look at a breeding herd of elephants, if there's some calves that are quite young and that aren't able to keep up with the herd consistently, you're going to find that their mother is going to start slowing down. And eventually, there could be such a big distance between the main herd and, say, a cow and her offspring, that they do become separated. So absolutely. But of course, conflict is natural amongst all animals. Uh, Elephants leaving a herd because of having an argument with one another is unlikely. But if it's something, I suppose, quite severe, I don't know what elephants would necessarily argue about, then perhaps they would move off. And then, Ox, you've asked, is the bottom part of an elephant's foot hard or soft? Well, it becomes calloused and quite hard because they're constantly walking around on the ground. So if you think about it, if you don't wear shoes for a very long time and you walk on different substrates, then your feet are going to become cracked. The skin is going to harden. So yes, to a degree, it is hard. However, there's no. If you actually look at the cross section of an elephant's foot, you'll be surprised because they're walking on pretty much like the ball of their foot, if you can think of it like that. And there's a lot of space in that foot that is filled with a sort of spongy tissue. So theoretically, yes, it is soft. I reckon I have never touched the foot of an elephant, but when you look at a young elephant's tracks, You don't see many of the grooves and the patterns when a track is left in the sand. But as they get older, you'd start to see more of that. So I imagine that the foot will be a lot softer and more sensitive. I don't even think we've had a breeding herd come through just yet. All the bulls just mingling around. Yesterday there was a very lonely elephant bull. He looked quite distraught that he was the only individual at the waterhole for quite some time. I think maybe what we can do is let's have a wider view. Let's see what else is out and about. Maybe we can see some other animals that are going to be moving down from the tree line. Sometimes the cameras have a bit of a delay, but there's a question from Mike, and you're wondering how do animals like mongoose make sure to not get stamped on by elephants? Well, it's a tricky situation. For the most part, you won't find lots of little animals running beneath the feet of elephants. They will typically get out of the way before something like that. But if they, for example, if elephants happen to be moving through the area and a mongoose or two, like a dwarf mongoose, isn't managed to follow, able to follow the rest of the colony, then it's just going to try and look for some shelter. It's going to try and go underneath a log, maybe down a burrow. Something along that line, just to protect itself a bit. But we have seen it before, and on Wild Earth, in fact, actually on the Juma Dam cam, where there's always blacksmith lapwings, as we know, around the water's edge, and the a herd of elephants came through, and they accidentally squashed the blacksmith lapwing chicks. It was so sad to see. It was actually traumatizing. We watched this whole thing. There's nothing that you can do, and I don't think elephants go out there on purpose, going, what can I squash today? I have seen tortoises that have been definitely been squashed by elephants, not by vehicles. So yeah, they step on things every now and then. I'm sure out of spite, every now and then they might squash things, but again, they don't go out and search for it. I mean, it's just like the same thing as if a rather large herd of buffalo stampeded in a direction. They could also squash all sorts of creatures.
What if you could explore the world from an entirely new perspective? Flying a real drone live without leaving home. This is Nature Eye. Discover our planet's landscapes with a personal guide and a powerful camera. Every flight helps conserve the locations you visit. Book your adventure with Nature Eye.
That someone's going to hear them even at nighttime. So yeah, so I think I think we're going to have to use both of them. I don't necessarily think robots roaming around in the bush would uh, would be quite strange and unfamiliar. I hope we don't go that route, but I do like the fact that we use different types of technology to help preserve wildlife. Oh, look at the elephant going straight into the mud for a splash around. This is one of the favorite areas that we consistently see elephants rolling about. So it must be quite a deep section in comparison to a lot of the other pools. There we go. More elephants getting involved. And the more and more these elephants play around and wallow about, the deeper that area is going to get. A good example of this is Ndlovu Dam on Pridelands, where one of Eco Training's camps is based. In the middle of that waterhole, and there's certain sections, because I've seen it almost dry before, that are so much deeper than others, and it's just from animals consistently, and specifically the elephants, swimming and rolling around in the sort of deeper water. So who knows how deep that this place where the elephants are frolicking about will be in the next couple of years. So, Picasso, you've said the skin of a newborn elephant must be relatively smooth. Does the skin grow independently? And if so, what age uh, would it have its final crumbliness? I love that word, crumbliness. I'm just trying to quickly just thinking about this. So you see, I haven't ever touched a baby elephant, but baby elephants are born with body hair. All elephants have got body hair. It's kind of, wouldn't say prickly, but it's coarse hair. And younger elephants have a lot more of it on their body. So yes, their skin would definitely be smoother. And I'm just trying to think. So I know a few people have described what elephants' kind of skin feels like. They say it feels sort of rough. But I suppose it's just like, with us, as when you're young, when you're a baby, or, the saying, as smooth as a baby's bottom. I don't know. My dad used to say that all the time. Silly Aussie mannerisms, and then as we get older, our skin kind of gets tougher. The more we're exposed to the sun, all those types of things. So I don't know if you could give us exact time frame as to how quickly that skin becomes tougher. Um, I'm just trying to think if I know of anybody that actually does like elephant rehab and is consistently with elephants of varying ages, because I think they would be able to tell me. Oh, hello. Mahi, you've said how active are those big ears when it comes to hearing? So elephants have phenomenal hearing. Uh, So basically, the outer part of the ear, which is the thin flap of skin that you can see, that's not the part that's going to be helping the elephants with hearing, but you can see the internal opening uh, just kind of higher up towards their head. But they can hear very, very well. It's one of their main senses. But hearing is not the only function that these ears provide. So one of the main reasons for having big ears like that is to actually help cool them down. A great way to describe it is like a car's radiator. So as they flap their ears, if the elephants get closer, you'll be able to see on the underside that there are these huge veins and blood vessels that are exposed, and by creating movement, the cooler air will then cool the bloodstream down directly, and eventually then cool the brain. So they're highly effective. Another thing that they of course do is they make them cells look bigger, so they'll flare their ears out if they're in a situation that makes them feel uncomfortable. Um,
I started watching Wild Earth during COVID. I decided that I wanted to study more, and I saw that Eco Training Pridelands was doing courses, and I decided to do the 8-week online theory course at the end of last year. There's just so much out there to learn and to experience.
Sign up for an Eco Training digital course today with the promo code to receive 200 Rand off.
Oh, Sarah from the UK, you've asked if I can say hello to your husband, who is sick and listening, and also taking his mind away from the pain. Well, hello, Charlie. I'm glad that you are watching it today, and I'm sorry that you're feeling unwell. So I hope that the elephant therapy will help you with your day. And then, Honey Badger, you've said, do most lodges use solar power these days? I find in South Africa, a lot of lodges are still using electricity, you know, like from the government or, whatever ever might be supplying electricity. However, in most of the other African countries that I've traveled to, the camps are so remote that there is no option to uh, to use electricity in the sense that we would use it. So it started off with people using generators. You can only imagine the amount of fuel that was being used. Not great, but most of the camps now are completely off the grid and will in fact use solar. So I hope that South Africa moves in that direction, and yeah, I think that's super important. It's just there's just so much infrastructure around the wilderness areas in South Africa that they don't need to. All the elephants, all with their feet on that fallen log. Why do I keep saying fallen log? On the log. It fell a very long time ago, and it was a tree. And a few of them having a dust bath. I haven't been seeing too much bathing behavior. Right, everybody, as you know, it's that time now to introduce the AfriCam cameras, which I'm quite excited about. We'll have a couple more views of different waterholes.